Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Today, we're plunging into a story that's, well, as ancient as human ingenuity itself, yet it feels incredibly urgent, like tomorrow's headlines already written.
Mm.
We're talking about the mighty Indus River.
hmm
I mean, this thing is a titan stretching over, what, 3,180 kilometers?
That's right. All the way from the high plateaus of Tibet, winding through these incredible landscapes in Kashmir, and finally reaching the Arabian Sea.
And for millennia, it's just been this absolute lifeline, hasn't it? Nurturing agriculture, powering communities.
Just sustaining life for millions. And you can't forget, it cradled one of the world's earliest great urban societies, the Indus Valley Civilization, way back around 2500 BCE.
Incredible history. But despite that unifying flow, that life-giving power, this river has somehow become the focus of a really intense battle.
Yeah, and it's a battle that now seriously threatens decades of, well, let's call it fragile cooperation between two nuclear-armed neighbors, India and Pakistan.
Exactly. So we're diving deep into the Indus Waters Treaty today. This agreement, it was signed way back on September 19, 1960.
And actually effective a bit earlier, from April 1st, 1960,
Oh.
signed in Karachi.
Right, Karachi. And for over 60 years, this treaty was meant to be, I guess, a beacon of stability, brokered by the World Bank, no less.
Absolutely. The whole idea was brilliant in its, well, simplicity almost. Ensure both nations could share this immense river system, its bounty, without actually coming to blows over it.
And it worked for a remarkably long time, didn't it?
It really did. I mean, think about it. This treaty survived 3 major wars between India and Pakistan, plus countless other conflicts and skirmishes. It's a rare, almost unique example of managing a shared resource in such a volatile region.
That resilience is just. It's quite something. It speaks volumes about the treaty's design, I suppose.
And maybe also about the sheer necessity when something is so fundamental, maybe, just maybe, cooperation becomes the only real option, even between rivals. For a long time, anyway.
A historical marvel, as you say.
Yeah.
Now that stability seems to be under this unprecedented, really alarming threat.
Things have shifted dramatically.
Yeah, culminating in that devastating terrorist attack on April 22nd, 2025. In Pahalgam, Jammu and Kashmir, 26 civilians tragically killed, mostly
It's
tourists,
just awful. And claimed by a Pakistan-based militant group.
which led India to immediately suspend this critical treaty, just like that. And suddenly, there are very serious fears of a water war.
A term you really don't want to hear in connection with 2 nuclear powers.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
So today we're going to unpack exactly what happened, what the suspension actually means for, well, hundreds of millions of people who depend on this river system.
And why understanding this whole hydro-diplomatic crisis is just so crucial right now. We need to get into the details, the surprising facts, the profound implications.
To really get the stakes here, we probably need to go back a bit, right? Understand the river system itself.
Definitely. It's not just one river, the Indus. It's this vast, intricate network. 6 major rivers, really. Its historical importance, as we touched on, it's massive.
Beyond the ancient civilizations, today it irrigates huge areas, right? In India's Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan.
And it sustains agriculture across most of Pakistan. You've got key dams like Mangla in Pakistan, Bakranangal in India. They harness its power. It's truly the lifeblood for both economies, for their food security.
Literally feeding nations.
Hmm.
But the modern problems really kicked off with partition in 1947, didn't they?
Oh, absolutely. That painful, abrupt division of British India, the Radcliffe Line, which drew the border, it just sliced right through the Indus system.
With no real thought for the water flow.
Exactly. It didn't respect hydrological boundaries at all. So you suddenly had 2 new countries trying to share this vital resource, but the plumbing, so to speak, had been cut arbitrarily.
Like sharing one tap after the pipe's been hacked in half. I can see how disputes would erupt pretty quickly.
They did. It got serious enough that the World Bank had to step in. And it wasn't a quick fix. We're talking over 9 years of painstaking negotiations.
9 years. Wow.
Yeah, on and off, involving tons of technical studies, complex diplomacy, trying to bridge this deep mistrust between the brand new nations. But eventually, it led to the 1960 treaty.
And again, the fact it held up through wars.
Mm.
What was the magic? How do they manage that?
Well, the treaty itself, it's a fascinating piece of pragmatic diplomacy. It meticulously divided the system. The eastern rivers, the Bees, Ravi, and Sutlej were allocated primarily to India.
Okay.
And the western rivers, the Indus, the Chenab, and the Jhelum, went primarily to Pakistan.
Primarily, so not exclusively.
No, and this is key. India retains specific, quite limited usage rights on those western rivers. Things like some irrigation.
How much are we talking?
Around 700,000 acres, give or take. Think roughly the size of Rhode Island in the U.S. And non-consumptive uses, particularly hydropower.
So generating electricity without actually taking water out of the system long term.
Exactly. Run-of-river projects, mostly. And even the storage for these uses was carefully capped. About 1.5 billion cubic meters for irrigation, 2 billion for hydro, plus a small allowance for flood storage.
That's incredibly detailed, down to the cubic meter.
It had to be, didn't it? That granular detail was probably essential to stop future arguments over every single drop, a masterclass in trying to preempt conflict.
And it wasn't just divvying up the water, was it? There was that transition period, too.
Right. For 10 years, India actually kept supplying water to Pakistan's canals from the eastern rivers, while Pakistan built its own infrastructure to use the western rivers fully.
And India helped pay for it.
Yes. India contributed a really substantial sum, around 62 million British pounds sterling back then. You could think of it as maybe 125 metric tons of gold. A huge investment.
That really underlines the commitment they had, at least initially, to making this work, an investment in peace, like you said.
Absolutely. And to manage it all, they set up the Permanent Indus Commission. This body was meant to meet annually, exchange data, and crucially, sort out any disputes that came up.
Like a first line of defense for disagreements.
Precisely. If the commission couldn't resolve something, it could go to a neutral expert, basically, and partial technical judge, though their findings weren't strictly binding.
And if that didn't work?
Then, as a last resort, it could escalate to a court of arbitration, whose decisions are legally binding on both countries. A multi-layered system.
A very clever structure, designed to handle technical issues before they blew up politically. And it worked for decades.
It did. It was crucial for maintaining that stability. Real foresight went into it.
Okay, so let's fast forward to the present day, because, as we said, things have taken a very sharp, very alarming turn. That April 22nd, 2025 attack in Pahalgam.
Yes, the attack that killed 26 civilians, claimed by a Pakistan-based group.
And India's reaction was immediate and dramatic. April 23rd, they suspended the treaty.
Just like that, stating they'd hold it in abeyance, basically put it on pause, until Pakistan, quote, credibly and irrevocably abjures cross-border terrorism.
Strong words. And Pakistan's reaction.
They vehemently denied any involvement in the attack, of course. They called India's move unilateral, unjust, and politically motivated, and issued a really dire warning.
What kind of warning?
That disrupting the water flow would be seen as an act of war. They even hinted at a potential nuclear response.
Wow. That's about as high as the stakes can get, isn't it? Turning off the water tap and daring the other side to react, but with nuclear weapons in the background.
It's incredibly dangerous. And India didn't just talk, they acted quickly. Remember the Ravi River, one of the eastern rivers allocated to India?
Yes.
Well, on March 1st, 2025, even before the formal suspension announcement, interestingly, India stopped its flow towards Pakistan. That ended a 45-year continuous flow under the treaty arrangements.
A significant move even before the suspension.
Very. Then, on May 5th, 2025, after the suspension, India did something else provocative. Off-season reservoir flushing at two of its dams on the western rivers, Salal and Baglahar.
Without telling Pakistan.
Without informing Pakistan, yes. Now, this flushing means releasing large amounts of stored water unexpectedly. It can mess with downstream levels, potentially cause localized flooding. It violates the spirit, if not the letter, of cooperative management under the treaty.
Designed to ensure predictability and trust, which were clearly gone by this point.
Absolutely. There were some rumors flying around on social media about floods in Pakistan, but Pakistan's water authority quickly denied them, saying levels were normal for the season. Still, it shows the immediate tension, the potential for panic and misinformation.
And then, just to make things even more complicated, there was a legal ruling.
Yes, amidst all this chaos, the Court of Arbitration, that final dispute body we mentioned, issued a supplemental award on June 27th, 2025.
About what?
About its own competence, basically its authority, regarding two specific Indian hydroelectric projects, Kishanganga and Rattle. Pakistan had objected to these way back in 2017.
Saying their design violated the treaty.
Right, claiming they could affect downstream flows into Pakistan. The court essentially said, look, India deciding to hold the treaty in abeyance doesn't stop us from ruling on these long-standing disputes.
How did that go down?
Well, Pakistan hailed it as a major legal win, naturally. reinforcing their view that India can't just unilaterally suspend the treaty.
And India.
India completely rejected the ruling. They basically said they never recognized the court's authority on this matter in the first place and doubled down on the terrorism issue as their reason for noncompliance.
So a complete legal standoff on top of the political and military tensions.
Exactly. Because under the treaty's own rules, that court's ruling is supposed to be binding. So you have one side saying justice and the other saying we don't recognize the referee.
And this fight over the Kishangaga and Rattle projects, that wasn't new either.
No, not at all. Pakistan first raised objections in 2017. It led to the World Bank appointing experts in 2022. So these specific project tensions have been simmering for years. The suspension just brought everything to a boiling point.
Okay, so let's talk real-world impact. This isn't just diplomatic chess. It affects millions of lives.
Hugely. The immediate threat is to Pakistan's agriculture and its economy. They rely so heavily on those Western rivers. We're talking water for over 200 million people.
So disruptions could be catastrophic.
Potentially, yes. Severe irrigation problems could devastate their farming sector. Think food shortages, maybe even internal displacement. It also messes with their disaster planning, especially with severe monsoons predicted for 2025.
And what about India? What are their plans with this water they're potentially holding back or diverting?
Well, they've indicated they intend to use it. They announced plans, for instance, back on June 21st, 2025, to divert water to Rajasthan indefinitely.
Yeah, they've been building infrastructure, too.
Yes, they completed the Chaparkhandi Dam in 2024, which helps utilize Ravi River water, and they're apparently planning a new project, Kishanga II, another hydropower plant, maybe starting January 2025.
But couldn't diverting this water cause problems within India, too?
It could, absolutely. Water scarcity for their own farmers in some regions, perhaps. New environmental challenges. It's not necessarily a simple win for India either.
And hovering over all of this is Pakistan's warning, the nuclear one.
Yes, that drastically heightens the fear of miscalculation, of escalation. It pushes this already incredibly tense relationship into truly dangerous territory. It's like watching a tightrope walk over a volcano.
And aren't there other players involved, too? Like China.
Well, China controls the upstream sources of the Indus itself in Tibet. They have in the past, say back in 2016, blocked tributaries, ostensibly for their own projects, but it was seen by some as aiding Pakistan during periods of tension with India.
So another layer of complexity, regional powers influencing the flow.
Exactly. It just highlights how interconnected and fragile the whole situation is.
It feels like everyone involved, or at least observing, understands just how perilous this is. We've heard experts weighing in, haven't we?
We have. People like Dr. John Smith, a water resource management expert, really underscored the gravity. He said something like, the treaty has prevented water wars for decades. Its suspension is dangerous, requiring peaceful resolution.
And former Indian diplomat Rajiv Kumar had similar thoughts, right?
Yes. His words also stick out. Water needs cooperation, not confrontation, prioritizing people's needs. Simple, but profound.
These aren't just academic points, are they? They point to a fundamental truth, especially now.
Absolutely. In a world where resources, especially water, are getting scarcer, cooperation isn't just some nice ideal. It's vital for stability, regionally and globally. Their words are urgent calls for dialogue.
So let's try to wrap our heads around this. We've journeyed from the ancient Indus, this cradle of civilization,
To the intricate, carefully crafted 1960 treaty that somehow managed to keep the peace for over 6 decades.
and now to its sudden, alarming suspension in 2025, triggered by violence and deep mistrust. It feels like we're at a really critical juncture.
Undeniably, the trust between India and Pakistan seems completely broken, at least on this issue. And the potential for conflict over this shared vital resource feels more real, more immediate than perhaps ever before.
It's like watching that high-stakes game of hydro-diplomacy, as you called it, but the pieces are nuclear-armed.
And we heard those expert voices, Dr. Smith saying, the suspension is dangerous, Mr. Kumar calling for cooperation over confrontation. They echo that deep truth about interconnectedness.
Yeah, that water demands cooperation. It's essential for people's basic needs.
Which brings us back to the listener, to you. Why should this matter if you're thousands of miles away?
Well, the ripples from this could spread far and wide, couldn't they? This isn't just about water between India and Pakistan.
No, it's about regional stability. It's about global diplomacy. And it really highlights that fundamental challenge. How do we share essential resources in a world where they're becoming increasingly scarce?
We've seen how this treaty, this historical marvel of cooperation, is now hanging by a thread.
Seriously threatened.
So as we watch this incredibly tense situation unfold, it leaves us with a pretty stark question, doesn't it?
Mm.
In a world where water is becoming ever more precious, like blue gold, some call it, will diplomacy find a way to prevail? Or are we actually heading towards a future where water, maybe even more than land, becomes the ultimate battlefield?
It certainly gives us a lot to think about. A sobering thought to end on.